सदाशिवसमारम्भाम् शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ताम् वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। We were getting introduced to Mundakopanishad, and I already explained to you the meaning of the word Upanishad. Upanishad word comes from the dhatu Shadra in the meaning of Visharana, Gati and Avasadana. Visharana means to disintegrate or erode. Gati means to obtain, know, get. All these things are Gati. Then Avasadana means to destroy completely. Now how does this Upanishad come in all these meanings if we analyze? Because the Shad Dhatu comes with Upa and Ni prefix. Upani Purvasya Shadla is the Vyutpatti here, and there is a Pratyaya also. Kartari with Pratyaya comes. So in the meaning of a doer, this Upanishad is there. So Upanishad is the one which disintegrates all anarthas in our lives. Okay? So what kind of anartha? In fact, Shankaracharya, you can see here, talks about that. He says, Garbha Janma Jara Rogadi Anartha Kugam Nishatayati. That means this whole cycle, being a samsari means we are born again and again, and we are going through a life of being a wanting person, correct? So that means you have this Garbha Janma, you have to take birth, and then you become older, correct? Jara, then we have disease, Roga, etc. So like this, again these are physical afflictions, but mentally also we go through pain, different problems are there in life, correct? All this, the life of becoming itself is a problem. Okay, it is anartha. Anartha means undesirable. This life of being a wanting person and this life of becoming one thing, then from there again you feel some other want, you want to become something else. Then again, after accomplishing that also you may have other wants, so you want to become somebody else. Like that, it keeps on going on and on and on. We want to get rid of that undesirable life of becoming, and this Upanishad helps you to do that. It gets rid of your undesirable becoming life. Then it also gives you Brahman. Brahma Gamayati. Okay, it makes you reach Brahman, or it makes you obtain Brahman, to get Brahman. And how does it do that? By destroying avidya, ignorance. Okay, so by destroying ignorance and whatever is born out of ignorance, this life of becoming itself is actually an avidya karya only, is a result of ignorance. So all that it destroys. So in this meaning, we have this word Upanishad, Upani Purvasya Padehe Evam artham smaranat, artha smaranat, like this Shankaracharya says here. So here, what else did we discuss is, what I wanted to tell you was, this yearning to be a free person, to be free of limitations, is something instinctual in us. Since it is an instinctual thing which is there naturally, that this urge to be free from all limitations, there has to be a solution for that also given in this universe, because we are born in this jagat, in this universe, and we have urges like hunger, thirst. Even for breathing we require air, means it is available, correct? We require breath. Without breathing we can't be. So all that is given, correct? Everything is given to us so that we are able to lead a life here. Similarly, this natural urge to be a free person, free from all limitations, also should be having a solution, has to be given. And that is this Upanishad. This Upanishad also is given by Ishvara, like all other things. Okay? This Upanishad is given, and we have to recognize the giver. And more importantly, this teaching tradition. So, what I was telling is, this knowledge is given, and in fact the knowledge is given along with the teaching tradition, the teaching methodology. There is a sampradaya, and this sampradaya starts right from Ishvara, and then it flows through different rishis, and there is a parampara, there is a lineage of teacher and student and teacher and student, like that. It is an unbroken lineage right up to your own teacher and right up to my own teacher. Like that, the sampradaya has started and the lineage is there, this parampara. So that is also shown in this Upanishad. In fact, the beauty of this Upanishad is it starts with that only. The first mantra itself starts like that. We will see the meaning as we go ahead. So the sampradaya has started, and this knowledge which is freeing us from all limitations, all undesirable things which we face in our life, which makes you free from all dukkha. Okay. Shokam tarayati and all we say. Atmavid shokam tarati, like that Upanishad Vakya is there. The one who knows himself crosses all sorrow. There is no more sorrow, because you don't look upon yourself as a wanting person anymore. So that is the result, that is the phalam which the Upanishad gives. In fact, in this Upanishad itself, later on it will say, Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati. Brahmavid, the one who knows Brahman, becomes Brahman. Now this is also again a very, very important thing to understand, because already I have been telling you, the limitless or the infinite cannot be produced newly, correct? Then it won't be infinite anymore. If anything produced in time will go away with time, because time itself is created. Space and time are created. Akasha and Kala are also creations, are part of creations. Anything in space-time has to go along with space-time. It cannot be eternal. It cannot be nitya. It cannot be limitless also. So that which is the basis for this very space-time. This space-time itself is manifest from which vastu, from which object you can say. Vastu means in general it is object, but from which consciousness. That consciousness we are talking about. Okay? And that consciousness is free from even the space and time. And that cannot be created newly. or you cannot reach it in space also. Like you go from Delhi to Calcutta, or Chennai to Bombay. It's not a place you reach. It's not that you go to Golok Vrindavan and then Brahman is sitting there. It cannot be like that. Then if Brahman is confined to only Golok Vrindavan or Vaikunta, then Brahman is not limitless again. It cannot be. You cannot confine it to one physical location. You cannot confine it to a period of time. So this limitless cannot be produced newly. It cannot be attained by reaching some place. It cannot be attained by cleaning something also. Like for example, let us say, like recently in Thiruvananthapuram, for many years they didn't know that gold is there, correct? The Vigraha is actually gold, but it was covered with all the Alankara and all that for many years. Then once when they cleaned it up, they did some Abhisheka and all that, they then saw gold, it's all gold. So once the gold Vigraha was revealed, then many people went to see, have darshan of Lord Ananta Padmanabha Swami. Like that, you cannot have a Brahman, limitless Brahman, which is having covered by some dirt. So if you clean that, then you will attain Brahman. It's not like that also. So Brahman cannot be something which you don't have right now and then you have to attain it later. It is not a sadhya vastu, understand, because the important thing we have to understand is whatever you can achieve with your action, with karma, are all something which you don't have right now. Okay? What is achieved through sadhana, a means like karma, action, is purely something which you don't have right now. So the sadhana sadhya is very familiar to us. If you want to go to some place, then you know the means to do that. You can take a bus, you can take a train. So again, for a particular sadhya, for a particular end, there can be many means, correct? And that is the nature of action also. So you can take different action to attain the same end, to attain the same result. And that result also, in the case of karma, is something which you don't have already. So normally, we are used to this sadhana and sadhya in our life. So we desire a sadhya and then we find out a sadhana for that and then we use that means to get the ends. This is our normal life. And whatever you gain like this is all limited. Okay? And limited, by adding limited things, we can never get to the limitless. That means limitless cannot be attained newly. That means you already are the limitless. You are the limitless right now. When you are listening to me, you are already the limitless. That means it is a siddha vishaya. Okay, it is already gained. You are already that. But you are again gaining it. So it is a siddhasya sadhyam. Okay. So obtaining that which you are already, obtained, gaining something which you have already gained. Now how is that possible? That is possible because you have lost due to ignorance. If you have lost something due to ignorance, then you can gain it through knowledge. So if you want to gain something which you have already gained, then the only way to do that is through knowledge. So siddhasya sadhyam. Brahman also is like that. That's why Brahma with Brahma bhavati. Upanishad says. From this what do we understand? You are already Brahman. Because only you are gaining Brahman or you are becoming Brahman by knowing that you are Brahman. That's all. You don't have to do anything. And you are not going to become Brahman in the sense that you were not Brahman before and later on you have become Brahman. Here the becoming also is only notional. Like I told you already, you can forget that your spec, you can put it on your forehead and you can keep on searching all over the place. Now you are already the one with the spectacles, correct? But you don't know. Due to ignorance, you have lost your spectacles. Now you are searching all over the place. Then your spouse is your guru, correct? Your spouse comes and tells, hey, it's on your forehead only. So then you have achieved. You have become the one with the spectacles now, correct? That is purely through jnanam. So only through jnanam you can achieve that which is already achieved. So Upanishad also, this Mundaka Upanishad itself says Brahmavid Brahma Bhavati. So this Upanishad, the prayojanam of studying this Upanishad is you become Brahman. You are Brahman in fact. So you gain this limitless by knowing that you are the limitless already. So that is how you get rid of all anarthas. Correct? Because if you are the limitless, you are not a wanting person anymore. You don't have to look upon yourself as a wanting person. All your desires are already as though it is fulfilled. You don't have to gain anything newly. You are the limitless. Means you are the Atma of each and every person who was, who is, who will be. That is the thing here to understand. Sarvatma Bhava. Like this. So this is the teaching of Upanishad, and to glorify this teaching of Upanishad and give you a ruchi for that, correct? You have to have, see, somebody studying something, you should have some interest. And how do we gain or how do we cultivate interest in something? Then we have to praise the thing, correct? Only when we praise something and say that this is something great, people will get interested. Like that, generally in the beginning of any Upanishad or any text, we praise the prayojanam, correct? Whatever you are going to get from this knowledge is great, something which you should have. Like this we praise. So that is what also is done in the beginning of this Upanishad. In the first verse itself we will see that. So Upanishad word meaning we saw, and why we should study this textbook to learn about ourselves. That is another important question, because there is no other means of knowledge to know yourself. The regular means of knowledge which we use, like Pratyaksha or Anumana. Okay, Pratyaksha is sensory perception, Anumana is inference. Again, there are other types of inferences are also there. We call it Arthapatti. Then Upamana is there, comparison. Then Anupalabdhi, cognizing the absence, also is a means of knowledge, we count it. So all other means of knowledge are only helping you to know something other than yourself. They are all giving you objective knowledge. They don't talk about the subject, or they don't reveal the subject, because the subject need not be revealed also. The subject is self-revealing. The subject is presupposed. In the with reference to any knowledge, if you take any pramana vyapara, as we call it, correct? If you operate a means of knowledge, then the knower is implied. The knower has to be there already. The knower is the one who is using the means of knowledge to know something, some object. So now we are all the time in our life used to knowing things other than ourselves, and we take ourselves for granted. Now Upanishad is the one which comes and talks about you. Is that clear? It is about you. You have taken yourself for granted all this time. That is called avichara siddha. We have never analyzed about our own reality, who we are really. We took ourselves to be a limited person, but we don't like that. We cannot tolerate it. We cannot accept that. So we have a fundamental problem of self-non-acceptance, and we are struggling hard to get rid of all these limitations without suspecting that the problem is centered on myself. The problem is centered on myself because I take myself to be limited. And if the problem is centered on myself, the solution cannot be anywhere else. The solution cannot be by obtaining some things and keeping it with me, correct? The solution is not also obtaining different experiences or anything like that. The solution is to know my reality, because the problem is centered on me. The solution also has to be centered on me. Okay? So that is the important thing here. This Upanishad talks about your own Swarupa, your own reality, and this knowledge is not available through any other means of knowledge like Pratyaksha or Anumana or Arthapati. So Shabda Pramana has to be talked about. Now all your scientific mind will come. Now what is the proof that Shabda or Veda is a Pramana? Hey, don't ask for proof. A Pramana's proof is in using it. One Pramana cannot be proved by another Pramana. It is like asking, how do I prove that this font is some kind of a red color, correct? How do I prove that this is red? Can ear come and prove that the eyes are seeing correctly? Can your tongue come and prove that this red color? None of the other Pramanas can prove. In fact, at a very fundamental level, we are believing our eyes, correct? That's why somebody can be even colorblind. They will be seeing this color differently then. So, a Pramana cannot be proved because what it is revealing to us is anadhigatam. It is not available through any other means of knowledge. That is the very definition of a Pramana. So whatever Veda is revealing also, whatever the Upanishad is revealing to you is also not available anywhere else. That's why Brahman itself is called Upanishadam Brahma. This Brahman, this limitless, is revealed to us through Upanishad only. That's why it is called Upanishadam Brahma. The Brahman which is revealed through Upanishad. So, Upanishad is a Pramana, means the validity of a Pramana is in using it. There is no other way. And also, all knowledge is valid to start with. Understand this. Each and every cognition that is what we call Swatah Pramanyam. If we don't have Swatah Pramanyam, we will have infinite regrets. Because one cognition has to be proved by another cognition, means when will this end? It will become never ending. You cannot have any vyavahara. You cannot have any transaction in this world. So, until and unless it is proved wrong, that it is proved as an error, till then all cognition, all knowledge is taken as valid. That is our approach. Okay? So like that, even whatever Upanishad says is valid, because no other Pramana can anyway disprove it or prove it as wrong. So what the Upanishad says is knowledge. That's what we have to understand. That's what we have to understand by studying the Upanishad as a text. Upanishad itself is Brahma Vidya or Atma Vidya, and the text also is Upanishad, because the text only is revealing this Brahma Vidya to us. So there is a pratipadaka pratipadya sambandha between the text and the Brahma Vidya itself. And between Brahma Vidya and moksha, there is a sadhana sadhya sambandha is there. Because this knowledge is the means for moksha. Okay? So, all these things we have to understand. So, I hope it is clear that only by studying properly the Shastra, you can gain moksha. Because moksha itself is something which is already siddham. It's not something you are going to gain newly. It's only a knowledge that you already have it. That is the knowledge you are trying to gain. All sadhana, all the spiritual practice as we call it, okay, all this sadhana is only to prepare yourself to gain this knowledge so that you can have this moksha. Knowledge itself is moksha in fact, because there is no time gap between this knowledge and moksha itself. As soon as you know, you have it. There is no, you don't have to do anything. See, certain cases, for example, asiddhasya sadhyam. When does it happen? If something you don't have already and you have to gain it means, first you should have a knowledge also, how to gain it. Then you have to do to gain it. Is it clear? So there is a knowledge also is required, karma also is required. But Brahman is not like that. Here only knowledge is enough. Even a whiff of karma is not required. In fact, Shankara here in the introduction itself, Shankara says that even there cannot be any connection between jnana and karma. Karma and jnana are like samah prakashavat, he says. They are virodha. Whatever you can gain through karma is only limited. But what you are going to gain through jnanam, this knowledge, atma jnanam is limitless. So they are not the same, correct? They are in fact, if you keep doing karma, it is not good for you. Particularly with the idea that the karma phala is going to somehow give you moksha. No karma phala can give you moksha. That is why even in this Upanishad itself, there is a categorization. Apara vidya, para vidya. Like that it will come later. Now Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda, Upa Angas also. We have 6 Veda Angas are there. Shiksha, Kalpam, Vyakaranam, Niruttam, Chandas, Jyotisham. All these things are also called as Apara Vidya. All objective knowledge is Apara Vidya. All the scientific knowledge which we have today also is Apara Vidya. It is not, Para means you can say which is the ultimate, correct? So Apara Vidya means it's all lesser knowledge only. Then which is the highest knowledge? Para Vidya, ultimate knowledge. Yaya tad aksharam adhigamyate. The same Upanishad says later. That by which you gain this akshara. Akshara means that which is indestructible, this limitless. By that knowledge, if you gain, through which knowledge in fact you gain this limitless, that knowledge alone is Paravidya. All other things are Aparavidya only. Because any other knowledge which is in itself not complete and you have to do something to gain something means all that is Paravidya only. So even the Purva Bhaga of Veda, Rig, Yajus, Sama, Atharva, all the Vedas, I already told you last time, the Veda Purva Bhaga is like a supermarket. It is talking about different types of karma and what results you can get by doing all that karma. And any result of any karma is anyway limited. So first you have to have this Vairagya, this Nischaya, this discrimination that whatever I can gain through karma is not going to be good enough for me. It may be anything. You can become the president of United States, or later on in Swarga you can become Indra. Still, it is not good enough. That kind of a discrimination you have to have, and you have to be having this fire in you that I want to be free from all limitations. That mumukshu, for that mumukshu, then all these things will make sense, correct? So for that person only this Upanishad is actually, in fact, Shankara is somewhat partial to sannyasis. In the introduction itself, Shankara says that since karma has got nothing to do with this moksha, those who have given up karma, correct? If you take our traditional varnashrama dharma, ashrama dharma, karma is actually given to whom? Brahmacharis do karma. Grihastha, they also do karma. So karma is enjoined for all these people. Even Vanaprastha ashrami also has to do some nitya karma, then they can do upasana, which is all manasa karma. But sannyasi is one who has given up all karma. They don't have anything, nitya, nainitika, kamya karma. They have voluntarily given up all karma, along with that all roles also. A sannyasi is not even a citizen. That's why in those days sannyasis can go from one kingdom to another. Anyway, in those days there was not any passport visa also, so they were all roaming around. So even today some sannyasis, sadhus are all there, they don't take passport and all that. Because that means you are a citizen of one country which is not correct according to them. So a sannyasi has given up even the role of citizen, and such sannyasis who have given up all karma, for them only this Upanishad is enjoined, correct? Those are the people who can study this Upanishad, like that Shankaracharya talks about. But even like people like us who are grihasthashrami, correct? We don't have to take up a life of sannyasa, but like Bhagavan says in Bhagavad Gita, we should still be karma yogi. Okay, karma yogi also is a sannyasi, not in lifestyle but in attitude. Understand this, because a karma yogi has done tyaga of the karma phala. A karma yogi is a mumukshu. Karma yogi also wants only this limitless Brahman. So karma yogi is not interested in the limited results of any action, but still whatever our lifestyle demands, we are doing those actions. So even there, that's why we saw one value, correct? Values like Vivikta Desha Sevitvam, or even what we call Uparama. In Samadhi Shatka Sampatti, there is a Uparama. Means you only do that which is your duty, correct? That which is asked of you. In a particular situation, what is to be done, those things you do. You don't do anything more than that, because of your desire or longing or attachment or anything like that. You are not going to start something huge because of some desire to prove something to yourself or others, or to obtain something thinking that it is going to solve all your problems, or you don't have any fanciful ideas that only by obtaining something I am going to be happy. Such things are not there for also a karma yogi, because the karma yogi is no more interested in the results of any action. So karma yogi also is a tyagi that way. Karma phala tyaga you have done. You have not done karma tyaga. A sannyasi actually does even karma tyaga. Okay, because sannyasi also, but still sannyasi has to do some karma for the upkeep of the body, correct? You have to still live. For that you have to still do certain things. You have to eat. You have to go for bhiksha for that. So even in this Upanishad it says Bhaikshacharyaam charanti and all that. So people who are desirous to know this Brahman become sannyasis. Like that, it is talked about in this Upanishad. So even though we don't take the lifestyle of a sannyasi, we have to be tyagi, karma phala tyagi. Then only this Upanishad will make any sense to you. The teaching of the Upanishad you can grasp. The teaching of the Upanishad only if you are very clear about the limitations of the results of action. That is a prerequisite. It's a very important thing that you have to analyze yourself and come to a firm conclusion, and then only this teaching of Upanishad will be helpful to you. So, even though Shankara says this is for sannyasis, Karma Yogi also can study the Upanishad, no problem. Because for Karma Yogi also, karma is not important. Or karma phala is not important at least. We are also karma phala tyagi. But we are doing karma for our own antakarana shuddhi as a sadhana for gaining adhikaritvam, for gaining this qualification for this knowledge. We are doing karma to get rid of our own attachment to likes and dislikes, to be free of our likes and dislikes and have a certain mastery over our own mind. We are still doing karma, but we are not interested in the limited results of any action. We are also mumukshus, we want the limitless. And such people who are not interested in any karma but who are only interested in knowledge, in jnanam, they are the ones who are qualified for this knowledge. Is that clear? So, and in this context, Shankara says there cannot be any connection between karma and jnanam even in your swapna. He says, even in your dreams, you cannot have any connection between this Atma Jnanam and karma. In fact, this Atma Jnanam frees you from time itself. Okay? Because you understand that you are the very ashraya for this Akasha and Kala. You are the one on whom this space and time depend on for their very existence. You are that conscious being from whom space-time springs. That is you. And you are free from all limitations because the very space-time is created in you. You are, in fact, it is manifesting in you. You are the one who is manifest as the very space-time and all the things which are there within that. So that is the understanding. So those who are very clear about this, those who are not interested in karma and its results, the limited karma phala, they are the ones who are qualified for this knowledge. Okay? And that's how the Upanishad also, it will talk about the same thing later. There is a parikshya lokan karma chitan nasti akritaha kritena. Like that, there is a Upanishad Vakya is there later in the same Upanishad. It talks about this same Nirveda Maya, means this dispassion. The one who has understood that no amount of karma is going to give me that which cannot be attained by karma. Correct? Such an understanding the one who has, then that person will go to a guru. The guru only has to teach you. The guru himself or herself has to be a Shrotriyam and Brahmanishtam. Shrotriyam means one who has studied the Shastras, one who knows the methodology to teach. It's not enough that you know. Two things are there. One, you have to know the subject matter. The other is you also have to know how to teach, which is also very important. So in this, how to listen to Vedanta also, all of you should be very clear. It's a very important thing. How do I listen to Vedanta? Because this Vedanta is talking about you, the subject. I already told you it is subtle because of this very reason. All our lives we have known things by objectifying it in our mind. But here you cannot know yourself by objectifying yourself because you are the subject. You are the eternal subject. So here this knowledge is not by objectifying. That is the first thing. Because even one problem with people is that even if I say you are everything, correct? I ask you to do Nididhyasanam, I ask you to meditate. Then what? You will sit and visualize, close your eyes, as though you are spreading everywhere in space, let us say, because you are everything. But the problem is, space itself is you, understand that. There is no point in spreading everywhere in space and all that. You are the very space, you are the very time. That is the understanding. That cannot be an experiential thing. Understand this. In fact, each and every experience is you, because you are the one who is sustaining both the subject and object in every cognition, in every experience. So that consciousness is you. And that consciousness cannot be known by an experiencer and an experienced divide. When we talk about a particular experience, see, one misconception in all this spirituality is what? Many people think that you keep on meditating for a long time. Suddenly one day you will have some glorious experience and you will become liberated. This is the kind of whatever misconception which is going around. I know people who have been meditating for 30 years, 50 years and all that. They are still sitting, waiting for that one great experience to arrive. It's not going to come. Because the problem is not any experience. Our daily experience is good enough to know. Because in deep sleep you are there, but there is no subject or object. Understand that. So there is no subject-object divide in the deep sleep. But you are there. You are that undivided consciousness, indivisible consciousness, the whole. That is you. And even in our own, whenever we think of ourselves also, I have told you, there cannot be any division in that, correct? We are always a whole. Even in our own conception about ourselves, as a person I am whole. There are no parts. I am the partless whole. I am that consciousness. So you don't require any special experience to know this. It's only a question of giving up all wrong notions. Give up all wrong notions. That's all. That is what this teaching is. So when the Guru is teaching you and the Guru is showing you the mirror in the form of words, all you have to do is just listen to the Guru. Let the pramana operate. The problem is our small ego will try to intervene, raise questions, doubts, no problem. We will answer all that. That is why Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana is enjoined by the Upanishad. So Shravana, you listen what the Upanishad is telling about you, what the Upanishad's mission is about yourself. And Mananam is any doubts which may rise, that you can clarify all that, no problem. That's why we have a Guru Shishya Samvada. Even in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna was having a Samvada, a discussion with the Acharya, Guru, who is Bhagavan Krishna himself. So we can have discussion, we can get clarity. But still sometimes we have habitual tendencies are also there. So we have to also keep recollecting this knowledge. Whatever we have heard, be with that always so that it becomes your nature, until it becomes natural. So that's all you have to do. Correct? You have to prepare yourself to gain this knowledge, and you have to be established in this knowledge. So this knowledge itself, the process of this knowledge is nothing but giving up all wrong notions about you. Give up all the limited notions about yourself and embrace the limitless. That is the process. And whenever you are looking at yourself through the words of the Guru, through the words of the Shastra, that is what is happening. You have to just surrender to the Pramana, in fact, here. I talked about surrendering to Ishvara, correct? But more than surrendering to Ishvara, you have to surrender to the Pramana. Every time you are listening to your Guru, the Pramana is operating, and you surrender to that Pramana which is revealing your nature. It is a mirror in the form of words. Let those words operate and drive away all the ignorance which is there, all the wrong notions which is there about yourself, and what is left behind is you, the self-conscious, self-evident, self-existent, glorious you, the limitless you, which is not wanting in any respect, which is Purnam, which is whole. That is you. And that is what you have to let it happen, correct? When you are listening to in the class also, don't worry about facts. Here it's not about factual knowledge here. It's not about whether there are 3 koshas or panchabhutas or whatever, correct? It's not academic learning also. It's not about how many Upanishads you have learned or how many chapters of Gita you have studied. None of that really matters. Have you understood who you are? Are you enjoying whatever the Guru is revealing about yourself? That is the important thing here. When you are listening in a Vedanta class, you have to see yourself through the words of the Guru, through the words of the Shastra. That is the only thing. All else can come later. Even I don't even believe in taking notes and all that. Many people take seriously, they take notes, while Swamiji is beautifully giving the vision. Now don't even take notes and all that. Notes and all you can recollect. After the class, you recollect and note down something. That is fine. But when the class is happening, just enjoy. Enjoy the vision that you are not a wanting person anymore. You are the limitless. That is the vision. And that has to transform you. In fact, that will, the more and more you listen, that vision has to go into you, and it will also, it will express itself in your day-to-day life also now. You are going to become a different person. You are going to transform. There is no doubt about that. You have to only let this Pramana operate. Don't interfere in that. Or even if you feel like interfering, if you have any questions, of course we will be happy to answer all that. That's why there is a whole Guru Shishya Parampara is there, correct? Whatever questions you have, don't think that you are the first person to ask that or anything like that. All the questions have been asked and they have been answered also. So that is all part of the teaching tradition again. That is all part of the parampara. The lineage is there. In different eras, people have asked different Purvapakshas, different types of questions, and they have all been answered also. So that's how we have to listen. Listening to Vedanta means self-transformation. While listening only you are transforming. You are seeing yourself differently. You are seeing yourself so clearly through the words of the Guru and the Shastra. All else comes later. Don't worry about anything else. Just be drenched in this vision and be transformed. That's how you have to listen to Shastra. And that's a very important thing, I think. So I just wanted to make that also clear. And that is the beauty here. The Shastra will bless you. All you have to do is surrender to the pramana and it will bless you with ananta, in fact. With the limitless, you are going to be blessed. That is the beauty of this knowledge. So now let us also understand the meaning of the Shanti Mantra. We started with the Shanti Mantra, Bhadram Karnebihi Shrunuyama Devaha. He Devaha, Karnebihi, with our ears, O Devas, with our ears, Karnebihi, Shrunuyama, what is Bhadram? Bhadram means auspicious. Okay, something which is auspicious, which is pleasing, which is going to give you happiness, let us say, that is Bhadram. So Bhadram Karnebihi Shrunuyama. So with our ears may we hear auspicious things, Hey Devas. So we are actually telling a prayer to the Devas. Okay? And again, for general people, auspiciousness may mean many things. But for a mumukshu, what is that? You have to hear the Vedanta Shastra only, correct? Shravanam, here, learning something which is auspicious, listening to auspicious thing means listening to the Shastra. So may we be listening to the Shastra always. That is how we have to take the meaning from the standpoint of a mumukshu. May we listen to the Shastra always. May we not be lazy or whatever. May there not be any vigna, any disturbance. Even though right now some disturbance is there, even that, let it go on in the background. Don't focus on that. Focus on what the Guru is saying. May we be able to listen to the Shastra without any disturbances. That is the auspiciousness for us as a mumukshu. So Bhadram Karnebihi Shrunuyama Devaha. Bhadram Pashyema. Okay. Bhadram Pashyema means may we see auspicious things. Akshabhihi, with our eyes. Yajatraha. Yajatraha also are one type of devas who like to be praised. Okay, they are praiseworthy also, and if you praise them, they will give you all goodies. Okay, so one type of devas are called Yajatra. So this Yajatra also, hey Yajatra, may we see all, whatever we see also should be auspicious. Again for us, what is auspiciousness? May we see our own Swarupa. That Atma is Brahman, nothing but Brahman, nothing but this limitless Brahman is Atma. May we be able to see that. May we be established in that knowledge. That is auspiciousness for a mumukshu again. So Bhadram Pashyema is very important again. So there is a prayer there as a mumukshu. Then Stirair Angaihi Tushtu Vamsaha Tanubihi. So Tanubihi means with our bodies. Tanu means body. Stiraihi Angaihi. Again body with firm. Angas means what? Firm limbs and all that. Correct? You have a firm and healthy body. With that body, Tushtu Vamsaha. Okay? May we praise you. Praise the Lord. Okay. Vesema Devahitam Yadayuhu. So throughout this life, Yadayuhu, Ayuhu here is life. Vesema Devahitam. So again this life is given to us by the Devas, because we are propitiating the Devas. The Devas are also helping us, correct? They are giving good things to us. They are the ones who are responsible for rains. They are the ones who are giving us all this food. So there is a whole cosmic cycle. Even in the Gita it is talked about in the 3rd chapter. Parasparam Bhavayantaha and all. So we give them prayers praise, and also in the homas we give them ahuti, the sacrificial rice, all those things, and they in turn bless us with all the goodies in life. So like this entire life, let us go by praising the Lord, the Ishvara, and this life itself is something which is given to us by Devas. Like this, that is the meaning up to that point. Then Swastika Indro Vrishtashravaha. So again, Swastinaha, may we have the blessing, okay, of Indra, who is Vriddhashravaha. Shravas means one who is famous, one who has glories, correct? Great fame and glory. Indra is one, he is the head of Devas, correct? So let Indra bless us. Swastinaha. Okay, may we have the blessings of Indra, who is Vriddhashravaha, who has great fame and glory. Then Swastina Pusha Vishwavedaha. Pusha means sun. So Surya Devata is Pusha Devata, and one who is Vishwavedaha, one who knows everything, one who is omniscient. So because sun only lights up everything, correct? Then only we can know. In the darkness, in Andhakara, we will not be able to know anything. Sun is the cause for all knowledge. So he is also omniscient. He is associated with knowledge always. So that sun, the Surya Devata who is omniscient, let that Devata bless us. Swastinastarchyo Arishtanemihi. Also may the Tarchya means bird. Here it is Garuda. May Garuda bless us. And Garuda is the one who destroys all enemies, all opposition. Okay, whatever may be, whoever may be opposing our studies, our efforts, all this vigna, all disturbances may they go away with the blessings of Garuda. Then Swastino Brihaspati Dadhatu. So Brihaspati also, the Deva Guru. Brihaspati is Deva Guru. Let Brihaspati also bless us with his knowledge. Because he is Deva Guru, he also has Brahma Vidya. So as a Mumukshu, all this prayer also is for gaining this Brahma Vidya only. We have to look at it like this. It is not for any worldly purpose or anything like that. Of course, this same Shanti Mantra can be interpreted differently also. But for a Mumukshu, it is all about this knowledge. How do we gain this knowledge? And for that, this prayer is there. So we always start any Atharva Veda Upanishad with this Shanti Mantra, because this is from the Atharvana Veda. Okay? So we will look at the first verse next week. Okay, the Mundaka Upanishad first verse. We will start next week, so we will close it here. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.